I want you to imagine, just for a moment, a journey that completely shatters every known law of physics.
Physics, space, time, literally all of it.
Exactly. I mean, I want you to picture a voyage that begins in the desert city of Mecca, travels instantaneously to the ancient sanctuary of Jerusalem, and then, doesn't stop there.
Right, it goes straight up.
Yeah, straight up, piercing through the very fabric of reality, traversing through 7 distinct layers of the heavens, reaching the absolute outer limit of cosmic knowledge, and then somehow returning to your bed before it has even lost your body heat.
It's wild, and all of this happening in a single solitary night.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this, because today on this deep dive, we're tackling a truly monumental Islamic event. The event known as Al-Isra and Mi'raj, the night journey and ascension of Prophet Muhammad.
And based on the massive stack of sources we have in front of us, the accounts from numerous companions, the step-by-step chronologies recorded in the Sirah, and the explicit mentions in the Quran, this is one of the most thoroughly documented events of the entire Meccan period.
It really is. And before we take another step, we need to make something crystal clear to you, the listener. Our mission today is a completely impartial exploration.
Absolutely.
We are looking at this narrative exactly as it is presented in the original Islamic source texts. So our goal isn't to debate theology or endorse any specific religious viewpoint.
Right. If there are politically or culturally charged elements in these texts, please know we aren't taking sides here.
We're simply acting as your guides. We just want to convey the ideas, the events, and the historical descriptions contained directly in the provided source material.
Our objective is to take you on this exact chronological journey. We're going to meticulously break down what happened before the journey even started, the earthly travel, which is known as Al-Isra, and then the cosmic ascent, known as Al-Mi'raj.
And the intense aftermath, too, when he had to wake up and actually tell people about it.
Yes, exactly. We'll focus heavily on the specific details and the theological why behind them according to the texts, because what's fascinating here is the context. You really have to establish the emotional landscape of Mecca at this specific moment.
Yeah, historians refer to this period as the year of sadness, right?
They do. The Prophet had just endured the passing of his wife, Khadijah, and his uncle, Abu Talib.
Which is just an immense personal devastation. What does the source material indicate about his state of mind leading up to this night?
Well, the texts frame Al-Isra wal Mi'raj not merely as a cosmic display of divine power, but as a deeply intimate moment of divine comfort. Khadijah was his greatest emotional and spiritual supporter.
Right.
And Abu Talib was his tribal shield. Without them, the hostility in Mecca reached an absolute boiling point. The narrative specifically mentions his desperate journey to Ta'if shortly before this.
Where he was hoping for sanctuary.
Exactly. But he was violently rejected. He was pelted with stones, forced to take refuge in an orchard, bleeding and exhausted. So the night journey arrives at the absolute nadir of his earthly struggles.
It frames the entire cosmos-spanning journey as an intervention of profound mercy. So let's look at the night itself. The text described the Prophet resting at the home of Hanani in Mecca. It's the dead of night, complete stillness. How does the narrative initiate the journey from there?
The silence is broken by the arrival of the angel Jibril, accompanied by other angels. But they don't just immediately fly off. The sources dictate a highly specific, visceral, physical preparation.
This part is intense.
Very. Jibril takes the Prophet to the area near the Kaaba where a literal, physical opening of his chest is performed. The narrations detail the body being opened from the throat all the way down to the lower abdomen.
Reading that in the text, it's an incredibly striking image. To begin a spiritual journey with a physical surgery.
It is. And Jibril removes the Prophet's heart, and the texts describe him washing it with the sacred water of Zamzam. Following the washing, a golden tray is brought forward.
And the sources are very deliberate with their phrasing here, right? They describe the tray as being filled with wisdom and belief.
Yes. Jibril empties the contents of this tray into the Prophet's chest, filling his heart with this wisdom and belief before sealing it back up. Companion accounts, like those from Anas ibn Malik, later reported visibly seeing the mark of that stitching on the Prophet's chest.
How do scholars and the texts themselves rationalize filling a physical organ with abstract concepts like wisdom and belief?
The textual explanation leans heavily on the nature of the reality he was about to enter. This physical preparation is presented as an absolute necessity to fortify his physical and spiritual capacity.
Because of what he was about to see.
Exactly. He was about to witness the furthest limits of the universe, stand in the direct presence of the divine, and observe phenomena that would shatter a normal human consciousness. The washing and filling served to strengthen his heart so he could endure the sheer weight of these incomprehensible realities.
So his mind wouldn't break.
Precisely. So the prophet is prepared. The next element introduced is the mount he's instructed to ride.
Right. Al-Buraq. The creature is brought forward, described in the text as white, smaller than a mule, but bigger than a donkey.
The nomenclature here is highly significant. Al-Buraq is derived from the Arabic word bark, which translates directly to lightning.
Which is a very literal descriptor of its movement.
Exactly. The sources note that Al-Buraq would place its hoof at the absolute farthest point that its eye could see. A single stride covered the entire visible horizon.
I want you, the listener, to visualize that, standing in the quiet, dark desert of Mecca, before a creature vibrating with such localized power that it covers the horizon in a single step. It really sets the tone for the physics-breaking nature of this deep dive.
It does. But the texts mention a moment of friction before they depart. When Jibril brings Al-Buraq forward, the creature actually resists.
It shies away, right?
It becomes restless and shies away from the prophet. Jibril has to intervene directly. He addresses the animal, asking, "Is it because of Muhammad that you do this? Nobody has ridden you who is more honorable to Allah than him."
And the texts note a profound physiological reaction from Al-Buraq upon hearing that.
It breaks out in a heavy sweat. Out of awe and respect for the rider it's about to carry, the narrative uses this moment to underscore the cosmic status of the prophet. Even a miraculous beast of the unseen world is overwhelmed by the gravity of who he is.
So he mounts Al-Buraq, initiating the earthly portion of the night journey, Al-Isra. They travel from Al-Masjid al-Haram in Mecca to Beit al-Maqdis, Al-Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem.
Right.
But considering the ultimate destination is the highest heavens, how do the sources explain this horizontal geographical detour across the Arabian Peninsula? Why not just go straight up?
The text provides several layers of reasoning. On a surface level, they emphasize that Allah displays his signs as he wills. But looking at the theological framing, Makkah, specifically the Kaaba at that time, was heavily populated with idols and active polytheistic worship.
While Jerusalem was universally recognized as the historical epicenter of prophetic monotheism.
Exactly. By traveling there first, the narrative establishes a direct physical link between Prophet Muhammad and the Abrahamic lineage. Prophet Ibrahim placed his son Ismail in Makkah and his son Ishaq in Palestine.
So moving from the sanctuary of Ismail to the sanctuary of Ishaq positions Prophet Muhammad as the leader in both of these sacred lands, the imam of both Qibla.
Yes. It honors the blessed station of Al-Aqsa itself, recognizing the region where so many previous prophets lived, preached, and were buried. And this journey to Jerusalem wasn't just an uninterrupted flash of lightning.
No, the sources detail specific stops along the way.
Now, some of these narrations are debated regarding their authenticity among classical scholars, but they add fascinating geographical texture. Jibril instructs the prophet to dismount and pray at Taba.
Which anticipates his future migration to Medina.
Right. He also stops at Mount Sinai, explicitly identified in the texts as the location where Allah spoke directly to Prophet Musa, and he stops at Bethlehem, which the texts note as the birthplace of Prophet Isa.
It reads like a physical retracing of the greatest moments of revelation. And while riding, the prophet also experiences vivid visions. He reports passing by the grave of Prophet Musa near a red mound.
The prophet describes seeing Musa standing in his grave, actively engaged in prayer. This specific, vivid detail serves to bridge the gap between the physical world and the world of the unseen.
It establishes the premise that the prophets maintain a spiritual life and devotion even within their graves.
Exactly. Another powerful vision recorded during this earthly transit is the appearance of the world itself, the dunya.
The texts describe the prophet seeing the material world personified as an old woman covered in excessive opulent jewelry.
The symbolism provided here is a stark visual warning. The old woman represents the temporary, decaying nature of the physical world nearing its end.
And the jewelry.
The excessive jewelry symbolizes the deceptive allure, the shiny distractions that tempt humanity into losing focus on the eternal. It's placed at the very beginning of the journey to contrast the fleeting nature of the material reality he is leaving behind with the eternal truths he's about to witness.
That makes total sense. So they arrive at the ruins of Beit al-Maqdis in Jerusalem. And the texts describe a very grounded action upon arrival. He tethers al-Buraq to a specific ring at the southwest wall.
Noted as the same ring used by previous prophets, he is participating in a historical continuity, grounding this miraculous event in a physical, mundane action.
Before stepping into the most awe-inspiring gathering imaginable.
Exactly. He walks into the sanctuary, and the texts state that inside, all the prophets of Allah who have ever lived are assembled together.
The greatest spiritual figures of human history, gathered in one physical space.
And the statement of the night occurs right here. When the time for prayer arrives, Jibril brings Prophet Muhammad forward to lead this assembly in a 2-rakah prayer.
When Jibril pushes him to the front of this massive assembly of prophets, what is the theological statement being made to the listener?
It unequivocally establishes him as the Imam of Imams. By stepping forward to lead, he is recognized as the final successor in the prophetic lineage, the seal of the prophets.
He isn't merely joining their ranks.
No, he is divinely appointed to lead them. It signifies that the core message of worshiping the one creator is unified from the very first prophet to the last.
Following the prayer, the prophet is presented with a highly symbolic test. The primary texts mention vessels being brought to him, one containing milk and one containing wine. Other narrations add water or honey. He looks at them and chooses the milk.
And Jibril immediately validates this choice, stating, "You have chosen the fitrah," or in some narrations, "Praise be to Allah who guided you to the fitrah."
Jibril adds that sobering caveat too. That had the prophet chosen the wine, his ummah would have gone astray. How do the sources define fitrah in this specific context?
Fitra refers to the original unspoiled spiritual inclination inherent in humanity. It's the natural disposition that points toward the creator and a balanced existence.
So milk represents that purity.
Yes. Milk is pure, nourishing, and elemental. Wine, metaphorically, represents that which alters clarity, corrupts the senses, and diverts one from the natural path.
So the choice of milk demonstrates his alignment with spiritual clarity, ensuring his message remains rooted in unspoiled truth.
Exactly. He chooses the milk, aligning his legacy with pure nature. But the earth can only hold this narrative for so long. Jibril turns his attention upward.
This is where we transition to Al-Mi'raj, the cosmic ascent. The texts emphasize that this was a physical ascent. Space, time, gravity, speed, they all submit entirely to the will of their creator to allow a physical man to ascend.
The sources are adamant that this was not a dream state, and as they begin their ascent, the narrative establishes a strict, recurring protocol at every single level of the heavens. It functions as a cosmic checkpoint system.
How do the narrations describe the interactions at these gates?
At every gate, Jibril knocks. The angelic gatekeeper asks, "Who is it?" Jibril identifies himself. The gatekeeper asks, "Who is with you?" Jibril replies, "Muhammad."
And then comes the critical inquiry.
Right. Has he been sent for? Once Jibril confirms this, the gatekeeper opens the door, offering a remarkably enthusiastic welcome, stating, "What an excellent visit this is."
That specific question, has he been sent for, it really emphasizes that the prophet is an invited guest of the highest order, specifically summoned by the creator.
It does. So passing the first gate, they enter the first heaven and encounter Adam, the father of humanity. Adam warmly welcomes him, explicitly addressing him as my pious son and pious prophet.
The narrative includes a stark visual detail here too. The prophet observes Adam looking at two groups of souls. When Adam looks to the souls on his right, he smiles and rejoices. But when he looks to the souls on his left, he weeps.
The texts clarify that the souls on his right are the martyrs and the righteous descendants, while those on his left are the wretched destined for punishment. It offers a profound glimpse into the continuing awareness prophets hold regarding their lineage.
The burden of humanity's choices weighs visibly on its father.
From there, they ascend to the second heaven, encountering Prophet Isa and Prophet Yahya. The texts identify them specifically by their relationship as maternal cousins.
They greet the prophet warmly, calling him their pious brother.
Ascending to the third heaven, the prophet meets Prophet Yusuf. And the textual description here is striking. The sources state that Yusuf was given half of world's beauty.
Half of the world's beauty. That denotes an unimaginable level of physical and spiritual perfection.
Yet he exhibits profound humility, welcoming Muhammad as a pious brother and prophet. In the fourth heaven, they meet Prophet Idris.
The texts reference a specific detail regarding Idris, stating that Allah elevated him to an exalted position, echoing the exact same warm welcome and establishing a continuous upward trajectory of brotherhood.
Then in the fifth heaven, he is greeted by Prophet Harun, the brother of Musa. But the emotional weight of the journey really reaches a crescendo when they enter the sixth heaven and encounter Prophet Musa.
They exchange greetings, Musa welcoming his pious brother. But as Prophet Muhammad prepares to leave and ascend further, the text describes Musa beginning to weep.
Musa explains that he is weeping because a younger prophet, a young man sent after him, will have a greater number of followers entering paradise than his own.
Now, some might read that and misinterpret it as jealousy. How do classical scholars unpack Musa's emotional reaction here?
Envy is entirely unbefitting of a prophet. Scholars explain this as an expression of deep, sorrowful regret and immense love for his own people, the children of Israel.
Because Musa endured grueling struggles with his nation.
He did. He faced relentless rebellion. He weeps out of sorrow that his nation did not achieve the ultimate success in the sheer numbers that Muhammad's Ummah will. It highlights the heavy burden of leadership and the deep care prophets possessed for the salvation of their people.
It's a moment of profound realization regarding the unprecedented scale of Muhammad's community.
Exactly. So leaving Musa, Jibril, and the prophet ascend to the seventh heaven, the highest of the lower heavens. Here they meet Prophet Ibrahim.
The texts revere him as the Khalil of Allah, the intimate friend of God.
And the positioning of Ibrahim is a critical detail. The texts describe him sitting, leaning his back against a massive structure called Al-Bayt al-Mamur.
The much frequented house.
Al-Bayt al-Mamur serves as the heavenly equivalent of the Kaaba on earth. Just as the Kaaba is the focal point of terrestrial worship, Al-Bayt al-Mamur is the center of worship for the inhabitants of the heavens.
And the scale provided in the sources is staggering.
It is. 70,000 angels enter to pray every single day. Because the total number of angels is so inconceivably vast, once a group of 70,000 prays there, they never return. They never receive another turn until the Day of Judgment.
70,000 new angels every day since the dawn of creation. The math contextualizes the incomprehensible size of the unseen universe compared to our physical reality.
Ibrahim, who built the earthly Kaaba with his son Ismail, is honored by resting against its heavenly counterpart, and he welcomes Muhammad as his pious son and pious prophet.
They're now approaching the absolute zenith of the journey. Jibril guides the prophet beyond the seventh heaven to a monumental boundary marker known as Sidrat al-Muntaha.
The farthest lote tree. The visual descriptions in the sources explode with sensory details here.
The prophet describes the leaves of this tree as being as massive as the ears of elephants. Its fruits resemble the large clay jugs of a place called Hajar. He describes it being shrouded in colors that are completely indescribable,
stating that no human language possesses the vocabulary to capture its appearance. The texts also mention the tree being covered in golden moths.
The theological weight of Sidrat al-Muntaha is paramount. The name translates to the lote tree of the utmost boundary.
The texts explicitly define this tree as the absolute limit of creation's knowledge. The knowledge of every angel, even Jibril, stops exactly at this point.
Nothing that ascends from the earth passes it, and everything that descends from above halts there before continuing.
It serves as the ultimate border between the created universe and the direct divine presence.
There's a really strange geographic detail here about the roots of this tree crossing over into our world. What are these rivers the text describe?
The sources detail 4 rivers originating at the root of Sidra al-Muntaha. Jibril explains that 2 are hidden, flowing into paradise. The other 2 are visible rivers known on earth, the Nile and the Euphrates.
It beautifully connects the highest spiritual reality to the lifeblood of human civilization, suggesting a profound spiritual origin for these terrestrial waters.
At this ultimate boundary, the dynamic of the journey fundamentally shifts. Jibril comes to a complete halt.
He informs the prophet that he has reached his absolute limit.
He does not have permission to take a single step further, indicating that crossing that boundary without permission would result in his annihilation by the divine light.
But Prophet Muhammad is granted permission to proceed.
Yes. He steps beyond the limit of angelic knowledge, entirely alone.
A mortal man from Mecca, whose chest was physically opened just hours prior, is now traversing a realm where the greatest archangel cannot survive. He steps into the divine presence.
The texts state he reached a place where he could hear the creaking of the pens.
The creaking of the pens refers to the writing of the divine decrees, the Qadra. He is audibly witnessing the mechanisms of destiny being recorded.
The sources emphasize, based on the consensus of the companions, that the prophet did not see Allah with his physical eyes. However, he was brought into the closest possible propinquity, the grandest audience with the Creator.
In this ultimate meeting beyond space and time, the prophet receives the greatest gift of the journey. Not a physical treasure, but a commandment. The gift of Salah, the daily prayers.
Every other pillar of Islam was revealed down to earth via Jibril. Salah is considered so deeply intimate and paramount that the Prophet was called up to the highest heavens to receive it directly.
Initially, the commandment was for 50 daily prayers. Along with this, the Prophet received the concluding verses of Surah Al-Baqarah and the profound promise that the major sins of his ummah would be forgiven, provided they did not associate partners with Allah.
Receiving this colossal commandment of 50 prayers, the Prophet begins his descent, encountering Musa again in the sixth heaven.
Musa asks the immediate practical question, "What did your Lord enjoin upon your ummah?"
When informed of the 50 prayers a day and night, Musa reacts with urgent concern. He says, "Return to your Lord and beg for reduction, for your community shall not be able to bear this burden."
Musa speaks directly from a place of grueling, painful experience with his own nation. He tells the Prophet, "I know the people better than you. I have put to test the children of Israel and tried them, and I had the hardest experience bringing them to obedience. Your followers cannot put up with such obligation."
It is a striking moment of mentorship between prophets. Musa utilizes his exhaustive experience with human frailty to advise the younger prophet.
Because 50 prayers a day would require nearly constant devotion.
It would leave little room for survival or a balanced societal life. On Musa's urging, Prophet Muhammad ascends again. He negotiates, asking his Lord to lighten the burden for his ummah.
Allah reduces the number by 5. The Prophet descends back to Musa, who immediately says, "Your ummah will not be able to bear this burden. Go back."
A continuous back and forth ensues. From the divine presence down to Musa, then back up again. Each time the burden is reduced by 5, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Until finally, the decree is firmly set at 5 daily prayers. Even at 5, Musa urges him to go back again, asking him to request further reduction. The Prophet Muhammad draws the line here.
The texts record him saying, "I have returned to my Lord until I feel too ashamed before him. I surrender to Allah's final order."
A voice then calls out, establishing a divine rule of immense, enduring mercy. Allah decrees they are 5 in number, but 50 in reward. I have decreed my obligation and have reduced the burden on my slaves, and I shall reward a single good deed as if it were 10 good deeds.
The sources expand on this accounting of deeds established during this interaction. If a person intends to do a good deed but is unable to complete it, they receive 1 reward simply for the pure intention.
If they complete it, they receive 10 rewards.
Conversely, if a person intends an evil deed and restrains themselves, 0 bad deeds are recorded. If they actually commit the evil deed, it is recorded strictly as 1 evil deed.
The entire negotiation sequence serves as a masterclass in divine mercy. The physical requirement was drastically reduced to accommodate human weakness, yet the original, massive spiritual reward of the 50 prayers was entirely preserved.
With the gift of Salah secured, the texts detail that before the journey home, the Prophet is given extensive visions of the unseen, touring both paradise and hellfire.
The descriptions of paradise provided in the sources are richly sensory. He observes soil composed of musk, intensely fragrant. He views structures and tents constructed entirely of hollowed pearls.
He is shown the river of Al-Kauthar, featuring banks lined with domes of pearls and coral. It presents a vision of eternal rest and incomprehensible aesthetic beauty.
But the visions of hellfire are equally visceral, serving as severe psychological and spiritual warnings. He witnesses terrifying sights. Specifically, he passes by a group of people who possess nails made of copper, and they are violently scratching their own faces and chests.
When the Prophet asks Jibril to identify these people, Jibril provides a powerful, horrifying metaphor. He states, "These are people who ate the flesh of the people."
Within the textual tradition, eating the flesh of your brother is a vivid metaphor for backbiting, gossiping, and slandering someone's honor behind their back.
The self-mutilation with copper nails physically manifests how destructive slandering others is to one's own soul and dignity.
He also sees specific historical individuals, such as the man who slaughtered Prophet Salih's miraculous she-camel, serving as a permanent reminder of the consequences of defying divine miracles.
The sheer volume of sensory and theological input is staggering, but the ascent concludes. The descent happens, and he rides al-Buraq back through the night sky from Jerusalem to Mecca.
The texts intentionally insert very mundane, crucial details during this return trip. He passes by 3 different Qurayshi trade caravans traveling in the dark.
At one caravan, he feels thirsty, drinks from a water vessel they had left out, and covers it back up. At another, he spots a specific camel that had wandered off into the darkness. He visually recognizes the merchants.
These specific logistical details are vital to the narrative structure. They ground the ethereal, physics-defying journey back into the gritty reality of 7th century Arabian trade routes.
They become the empirical, falsifiable evidence he will use to prove his journey intersected with the physical world.
The Prophet arrives back in Mecca at the house of Hani. The texts mention a detail that truly emphasizes the suspension of time. He returns to his bed, and the bed is still warm.
The entire cosmos was traversed, the limits of knowledge breached, prayers negotiated, heaven and hell witnessed, and less time passed than it takes for a mattress to cool down.
As the sun rises, the ultimate earthly test begins. The Prophet wakes up and recounts the night's events to Hani.
She is instantly terrified for his safety. She physically grabs his garment and begs him, "O Prophet of Allah, do not tell people this lest they disbelieve you and harm you." She is acutely aware that the Quraysh are seeking any pretext to destroy his credibility.
The Prophet's resolve remains absolute. He states clearly, "By Allah, I will tell them." He understands the undeniable truth of his experience, and his prophetic duty demands he deliver the message, regardless of the mockery or danger it invites.
He goes out to the Haram, the area around the Kaaba. He is sitting there, visibly burdened by the weight of what he must share. Abu Jahl, the fiercest opponent of his message, approaches.
Seeing the Prophet's demeanor, Abu Jahl asks sarcastically, "What is the matter with you? Has anything new happened?"
The Prophet answers without hesitation, "Last night I was taken from here to Jerusalem." Abu Jahl is visibly stunned. He confirms, "And you are now back here amongst us."
When the Prophet answers in the affirmative, Abu Jahl recognizes what he believes is a golden opportunity to publicly ruin Muhammad's reputation forever. He asks if the Prophet will repeat this story to the entire community if he gathers them.
Abu Jahl gathers the Quraysh. A massive crowd forms. The Prophet stands up and repeats the entire astonishing narrative.
The reaction is explosive. The texts record people laughing hysterically, mocking him, and putting their hands on their heads in complete bewilderment at the audacity of the claim. A journey to Jerusalem took a month by camel.
The crowd immediately demands verifiable proof. A man named Jubayr ibn Mutim, who had traveled extensively to Jerusalem for trade, steps forward to test him. Knowing the Prophet has never been to Jerusalem previously, he demands a detailed architectural description of Beit al-Maqdis.
The Prophet experiences a sudden spike of intense anxiety. He traveled there in the dead of night. His focus was entirely on leading the congregation of prophets, and he had not meticulously studied the architecture. As he begins to describe it, the granular details elude him.
The texts record a secondary miracle occurring here to support the primary one. The Prophet states that as he stood there facing the hostile crowd, Allah miraculously displayed a vision of Jerusalem directly in front of him in the area of Al-Hijr.
The city was brought visually close to him, allowing him to observe it in real time and describe it flawlessly, down to the exact number of doors, walls, and pillars.
The crowd is stunned by the flawless description, but the skepticism remains entrenched. So the Prophet volunteers the ultimate empirical proof. He tells them about the 3 specific caravans he passed on his way back.
He names the merchants, describes the lost camel, mentions the water he drank and covered, and most dangerously, he predicts the exact arrival time of the lead caravan into Mecca.
Abu Jahl and the leadership of the Quraysh rush out to the outskirts of the city to meet the caravan. It arrives at the exact time the Prophet specified. They interrogate the merchants, and the merchants confirm every single detail: the missing water, the lost camel.
The physical evidence perfectly, undeniably corroborates the Prophet's timeline. They possess irrefutable proof. They have eyewitness testimony from their own people validating a physical impossibility. How does the leadership process this undeniable evidence?
They reject it entirely. Despite the flawless accuracy, Abu Jahl and the Quraysh dismiss the entire event, labeling it as clear sorcery.
The texts highlight a profound psychological and theological theme here. Empirical physical miracles rarely alter the hearts of those who are absolutely ideologically committed to disbelief. They simply recategorize the miracle as magic to protect their existing worldview.
This event acted as a massive filter for the early Muslim community. Some individuals whose faith was fragile could not reconcile the physics-breaking nature of the narrative, and they apostatized. But the reaction of Abu Bakr provides the counter-narrative of absolute conviction.
The mocking Quraysh run to Abu Bakr, assuming this unbelievable story will finally break his allegiance to the Prophet. They ask him if he believes this incredible claim of flying to Jerusalem and the heavens.
Abu Bakr's response is legendary within the textual tradition. He states simply, if he said that, he is speaking the truth.
If he said that, he is speaking the truth. He didn't require the caravan testimony or the architectural blueprints. His faith was entirely rooted in the established character and the word of the prophet.
That specific statement is why Abu Bakr was permanently bestowed the title as-Siddiq, the testifier to the truth. The night journey separated the deeply convicted believers from the skeptics, ultimately fortifying the core group of Muslims who would soon endure the arduous migration and build the foundation of the faith.
Let's take a breath and look back at the massive scale of what we've just covered. We started with the shattered heart in Mecca during a period of intense grief. We analyzed a physical preparation of the chest, a lightning-fast ride to Jerusalem, and leading all the prophets of history in prayer.
We ascended past the limits of angelic knowledge, past Adam, Musa, and Ibrahim.
We stood at the creaking of the pens to receive the monumental gift of the 5 daily prayers, glimpsed the visceral realities of heaven and hell, and returned to a bed that was still warm, only to face the harsh, mocking reality of the Qur'anic the very next morning.
It is a narrative characterized by absolute extremes. It moves from the profound depths of human grief to the absolute zenith of cosmic exaltation, and then forces a return to the gritty, dusty streets of Mecca to face fierce rejection.
I want you, the listener, to really sit with that for a moment. Consider the sheer psychological weight of having to return to normal daily life after witnessing the absolute outer limits of the cosmos. Imagine seeing the farthest lote tree bathing in indescribable colors, standing in the divine presence, and then having to wake up and deal with a mocking neighbor like Abu Jahl.
The psychological fortitude required to bridge those two realities is staggering.
It leaves us with a profound final thought to consider based on this source material. We live our lives entirely bound by the laws of physics. We view space, time, gravity, and speed as the absolute unbreakable laws that govern our existence.
We treat them as the ultimate masters of reality.
This narrative fundamentally challenges that assumption. It asks you to view these physical laws not as absolute masters, but merely as creations. Creations, like everything else, submit entirely to the will of the Creator.
If the rules of the physical universe can be suspended so completely, if time can be paused and space folded to comfort a grieving heart, what does that imply about the human condition?
When the rigid limits of the physical world are removed, what are the true, untapped limits of human spiritual potential? What is our true potential when the limits of the physical world fall away? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope meticulously unpacking this extraordinary journey through the original source material has provided a richer, deeper perspective on a night that continues to captivate billions. Keep wondering, keep questioning, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.